Thank you everybody for joining us and for spending your morning with the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture and Garrett Maho. My name is Lilia McEnany and I am an assistant curator at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture Laboratory of Anthropology. So those of you who are familiar with MIAC and our programming know that pre-pandemic, we regularly hosted monthly pottery demonstrations in our Bucksbaum Gallery. And even though we are open to the public, we are continuing our pottery demonstration series and all of our other programming via Zoom for the time being. So stay tuned for details on upcoming demonstrations and other programs by following our Facebook page and signing up for our monthly newsletter. Before we start talking with Garrett, a few things. To begin, I would like to briefly acknowledge the place where this conversation is happening, even though we are not physically at the museum today. I am located in Ogopoge within the Tewa world. As a non-native person living in so-called Santa Fe, I am a guest in the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people. And I wish to acknowledge all of the indigenous folks, Pueblo, Navajo, Apache, and so many others, past, present, and future, who walk on these lands and steward these places. And I would encourage everybody watching here today to reflect on their own position to the lands on which they reside. So during the course of the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. I will be moderating questions towards the end of the program. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to Garrett.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning in the world this morning. I'm Garrett Maho. I'm come from a potter, Hopi potters from the village of First Mesa, the village of Sichomovi village. I've recently been doing it, many years. I've, learned, from several other potters, including my grandma, which is my mom's mother, which was Marilyn Mahle, which started off, at a very young age as I was going to school, in grade school. Eventually, I felt myself that this is something that, I wanted to learn, as being Native American and being Hopi and who I am, something that needed to be carried on in the family as a tradition, as a whole tradition. I also do have, an aunt. Her name is Gloria Mahle, which is, our family tree of potters. I like to mention her too also. And one of my biggest mentors, was the latest Jacob Koopee. He was my mentor. He's passed on now, and I'm pretty sure some of you know who the gentleman Jacob Koopee is. If not, he was a well-known potter that came from the village of First Mesa. And I worked with him. He showed me, his techniques, and he was a mentor to me. He taught me. And this is something that, like I said, this is what I wanted to learn, as being a Hopi potter. All the styles and techniques, that we do, run in the family, some are shared, like for me, for the pottery situation, this is something that we need to teach each other. This is something that we shouldn't be stingy with. I mean, like for me, I'm willing to teach, someone, and it makes you feel good when you teach somebody something. You share your designs with one another. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And this is right now, the traditional pottery is dying out. We lost a lot of our good potters on First Mesa. And we need to carry this on. We need to teach the younger generation and to share this, with them. But, as my life goes on, this is something that, my heart felt. This is something that I wanted to do. And as being a traditional Hopi potter, it took many and many years to come to get where I'm at today in my life, my art life. I live the art world is where I live in. And a lot of it, I've really pertained, not to go very deep into, something that I can't share with everybody. But today, I'm going to show you a little bit of, where I started, the different techniques. I'm sure you probably see a little of my material. A lot of times, a lot of people want to see potter's wheels. They want to see all of that. What you see here is what I make my pottery with. Everything, like I mentioned, is from the earth. The clays are from the earth. This here is the process clay here. This is ready to be worked with. Before we harvest the clay, it's like a solid rock. It's like concrete. So when that rock is brought back home, we soak the clay, and it's usually done either in hot water, so the rock will melt a little faster. Once that's completed and your rocks have melted down, and you put your hands in the clay and you mix it together, with maybe like a watery pancake batter would probably be an example to you. But eventually you work with the clay and it gets thicker, and each time you add more water till you get, the right thickness to where it's going to be strained. My grandma used to use old curtains with little holes, so sometimes when I'm out shopping around, I'll look for some of those kind of materials that I could use to strain my clay in. But it's poured, through something really thin where all the sticks and stones that are inside the clay come out. That way you don't have rough edges or pieces of stone in your clay or whatnot. But at one time they didn't strain their clay. They just processed it and they used it like that. A lot of it was due to hold like maybe water, like the little pebbles that are inside the clay. So like when you go to different ruin sites and you see some of the pottery shards laying on the ground, you have little bits of grains in their pottery. And that is the reason why they don't strain their clays, because it holds the water. It's holding the water together, like the water canteens. So a lot of the pottery that was made centuries and many years ago were used for cookingware. So a lot of it was done with pottery. you know so from processing the clay and straining the clay, once that's done, you pour them either to an old flour sack or an old pillowcase, and the batter gets poured into the sack. Then from there, the sack is laid on the ground where the water is seeped back into the earth. So when we're doing this, there's not anything that's really wasted. The water goes back into the earth. The remaining of your clay that you have left, you feed it back to the earth, and you gain more from it as you go on, in pottery life. And I know, and I don't, know as much. You know, I've, was taught, and it's good to get feedback, from other potters, because that tells you that something needs to be improved. My grandma says, why you make a mistake, you learn from those mistakes. If you go over a line with your traditional breast painting your pottery, and you make a line that you shouldn't have made, well, that's a mistake, and next time your pottery gets better and better and better each time. But like I said, this is something that I wanted to do. So as I go on, the pottery, straining the pottery, letting the clay set back onto the ground. It's set for a couple of days, and after that, it's ready to be processed. It's ready to be used. So this here, I don't know if you can see it, but this here is the clay that comes from the raw material. This is from the earth. It's it's a natural it's a natural gray. So once it's set and it's dried, you create the pottery. A lot of the pots that I make are coiled pots. Um, like you said, some people want to see, potter's wheels. They want to see a big old thing, but you look and you see this is all I got here. This is what I have. I have my painting stone here, my burnishing rocks. These are my tools. that I use to work with the pottery, to shape the pottery out. Just these two things. These two things here make all my pottery. The pot that you see here make that. We'll get back as we go on, we'll get into this stage here, but right now, this is the molding stage. So, we harvest the clay, we brought back the clay, we processed the clay. Now it's ready to make your pottery. And at one time, we used to make the pottery on our elbows when we were small. And see, get around, and then you just start working with it. Sometimes, I'm real quiet, like when I'm really deep into, my work here. Sometimes you can't even hear me. But, like your mind is just set into what's in front of you, what you're doing. So everything I do is all coil method. It's all coil method. It's all a pinch pot. See, now you can tell, it's already kind of getting its shape. And each piece of pottery is all one of a kind. There's not going to be a pot that's going to be the same. It's always all different. The design may be the same, but shapes, colors will not be the same. The coloring on my pottery, I like to get the deep shades of orange in it to show that, it's been traditionally fired outdoor. The more wood and the more sheep that you use, the more hotter your fire is, the more colors you get to your pottery. I don't know, like you can see the variations of colors in the vase here, the small turtle that I have there. And then once you start working with it, you just bring your coils together. When you get your piece, I have a bowl of water here. As you're working with it, you got to, make sure that you get all your air bubbles in your pottery. If you don't, that's something that I had to learn too as I was, learning the pottery thing. That you got to take your time to make sure your air bubbles are all out. Otherwise, during the firing, you'll have accidents, which the air pocket will pop. It will either blow the pottery up, or it will blow a piece off of the pottery. And this was made from my elbow, the base of the pot. I guess as we go on, in a lot of, the pottery making, we tend to slow down. At one time I used to be pretty quick at it, but now it takes a little bit more time than how I used to, do it. Is there anybody? Can you guys see me on there? Is there?
Yes.
If,
Yeah.
oh, you can. Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody's still all awake and along. I hope
Yes.
nobody's falling asleep in their chair.
Absolutely not. Can you tell us a little bit about the piece that's next to you?
Yeah, I'm right now. I'm kind of like, well, what I want to do is I want to put it, in stages. Like I mentioned, right now, like I mentioned, we harvest the clay, we brought it back, it's processed. I'm in the stage of molding the pottery now. So as you can see, it's all coil, and it's all coil method pottery. And eventually it'll all come together. Once that's done there, it's set and it's dry. I really don't put it to the sun because if it dries too fast, it'll crack. So you kind of got to be careful. So once it's dry, this is something I made. It's a little bunny, and it's this here is ready to be burnished after it's being made, and it's sanded down. Now this here is ready to be burnished with a polishing stone. It's a water pebble that I have, that I inherited, something that was given to me. So some of these stuff that I have here on my table here have a lot of value and mean a lot to me. This stone here, my friend and I, Jacob, he took me for a walk and we went to harvest this clay. To harvest a rock, and he told me to pick a rock. And when we went to this place, there were several of them that were laying in the ground, and he said to pick one. And this is what you're gonna work with. This is what you're gonna start painting your pottery with. And as I was like painting the pottery, as I was growing up, my lines were not that straight. My pots were messy. And sometimes I would get frustrated with it. And I said, well, maybe this is something that, it's not for me. But eventually as I went on in it, I had the patience to do this. It's a lot of patience and a lot of time. Like I said, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes many years to get, where you want to be. And this is something that my mentors taught me, just take your time. Eventually you'll get there. So, I remember those words, and I will carry it on with me. But once after this is polished, it's ready to be painted. This is the water pebbles that I use. I don't know if any of you guys can see it, but this is what I use to burnish the pot. What I would do is I would wet the whole pot. I would, well, this is the burning stage. And this was like something else, I had to learn also, now that the perfectionist of potters, or like some of the art galleries, they look at it, but like I said, each pot isn't perfect. We've always make a mistake, or there's always a little boo-boo along the way. But we learn from those. Like I said, we learn from them, and we make sure next time it's better. You just kind of like experiment, with different things, like the paint, the painting, your brushes, the firing temperatures. It's just kind of like, and eventually I'm gonna finish it up and I'm gonna put a design on it, put on his little whiskers and his little tail in the back. But this is something that I usually make, for my nieces and nephews, around Easter time. So I figured that I throw one of my little characters in there with with what I do here. But now that's all polished. That's all polished. That's all burnished. It's ready to be painted with. Now my paintbrushes are yucca plants. These are my paintbrushes here. These are what I used to paint with. Um, a lot of times, people as they're learning, they tend to use a paintbrush, which is bought out of the store. But mine comes from the yucca plant. That's how traditional pottery is painted with traditional brushes. This is something that I had to learn, and it took me a while to handle a yucca brush, and like I said, my lines were not that straight, they were messy. Sometimes I think about, I wonder who has some of my very first pieces of pottery, way back when, now I look at it, God, it's a big old change. But this is what I paint the pottery with. After after working with your yucca plant, with there's thin fibers or one little hairline strand. I doubt if you could see this, but it's one hairline strand out of the yucca. See, here's another one. These are my paintbrushes. This is what I make my lines with. You can barely see it. Sometimes, when I'm painting my pottery, I'll lose my brush. And maybe I guess that's just due to the eyesight, as we go along, in the pottery thing. But these are my paintbrushes here. This is what it's all, the pottery here is all painted with, is with this one line. Everything. So those are my brushes. So like I said, once we're done here, I got my painting paintbrushes, the yucca brushes, and it's painted. Now with the paint here, the ink is a either a wild spinach plant or a beet plant that we get our juices from that makes the ink. This here is my hematite stone. This is what I mix the paint with. So when we boil the plants, it makes a thick syrup. And that thick syrup will eventually thicken and dry. What we usually do is pour it into corn husk. And it'll sit in the corn husk and it'll dry up in there. So like when you're ready to paint, you got a little small jar like I do. And I put a little piece of that rock in there. And I add a little bit of water to dilute it. So once I get it, this is my paint here. And I'll add a little bit water to it. Sometimes it's a little rich. And those are, these are all the things that I had to learn how to make my paint, making sure the paint doesn't come off your pottery. Those are some of the troubles I had, because my paint would come off and I was wondering why. And sometimes it was like too rich. And it's just stuff that, I've, had to learn. See, like, I think this one may be a little bit too rich, but eventually I'll add a little bit more water to it. And for some reason, we have, I don't know, I guess it just comes where we, put our brush in our mouth and, we get paint on our lips and, it's,
Garrett, do you mind if we do some questions right now?
sure.
Great. So we have a question about the piece that you're holding right now. We have a question from Guy asking, did that white pot start with a gray clay?
Yes, it does. It starts with a gray and eventually, like I said, it'll burnish I polish it like I see here. It'll get a real high shine like you see the vase here. This vase here was fired a couple days ago. So this was something for me, to little demonstration. But yeah, this gray will turn this color, depending on how hot the fire gets. Like I said, the more wood and the more dung we use, the more colors and variations you get in your pottery. So it depends on how hot the fire gets. Some people like it, less colorful, which is still done traditionally. Some people just like them real white. So it's just depending the temperatures, on the fires. And with the firing, I have no control over that. So sometimes I always wonder how hot it gets because we don't use electrical kilns to fire pottery. Outdoor traditional firing is done outdoor.
Right.
So once it's painted, after the painting situation, then it's ready to be fired outdoor. It's taken outdoor, it's fired with wood and sheet dung. Sheet manure is a traditional method of firing traditional Hopi pottery. So once that goes out, you'll know when somebody's firing because you practically smoke out the whole area. Or like when someone's getting ready for the show, like Santa Fe Indian Market, all the potters in First Mesa will be firing. I mean it's all smoky, like getting ready. People are getting ready, and I don't know. It just kind of gets you all excited. It makes you kind of get you motivated. You want to learn. You want to do something. But yeah, eventually this is gonna turn a different color, and I'm gonna put a design on it. But eventually it's gonna turn this type of color. Maybe something similar to like the turtle I did.
Mhm.
It's got a little hornet on it with the tobacco flower. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
speaking of design, we have another question about your design process. What inspires your figures and how do you lay them out on the bowl? And that question is from Dylan.
A lot of it is done from like one line or drawn upon the pot, like my grandma used to do. She used to just draw one line. So once you draw that one line, you make that one line, and you eventually kind of know how everything's going to be blocked out on your pottery. Like the perfectionist on it, I guess you can say now. A lot of people, how is it so symmetrical? Well, I guess it's just your eyes, and like I said, the talent. My lines and my figures, weren't all that straight, but eventually, I learned and how to square things out and make sure that things fit perfectly onto the pottery. Because this is what a lot of the people look like competition wise. Like I've gone a lot. I won many awards. In my pottery, my art world that I live in today. But those are some awards that you have to work really hard for, and these are some of the things that a lot of these high class collectors, they look at your lining, your work, but it's traditional. It's all traditional. Like this vase here, it's fired. It's got another version. See all the different blushes on it. This one here has a birthmark. which is something that my pots don't normally get. And getting a birthmark on your pot, to me, I think is something special because you know it's human. These are spiritual beings just as well, like the Kachina dog carvers. Those are beings. We create something, you're creating human. This is what comes from your heart to here. So it's things that we all look at, as growing up, different stuff that we learn along the way. We get feedback from others, other potters, and I'm happy that, say somebody wants to use the design. I would recommend that they want to use it because it's teaching. I can say I'm teaching someone something, and that's how we learn. You know, we all have, different styles. In First Mesa, all the potters have different styles. Their family trees, they all, but it seems that we all need to share and, give each other's feedback, not criticize one another. Sometimes we get that, but I mean, I don't like to, be in those kind of situations because this is a gift. This is a gift for everyone. Everybody can try it. Everybody can do it. You just got to put your mind and your heart and your soul into it. And eventually it'll come to you. So, today I shared a little bit with you. I wish I could have done a wiring outdoor, but I think some of the people that are listening today pretty much know what a traditional firing is and the blemishes, the different variations of colors you get in your pottery. There may be some people that are watching that are new, like you have any questions. I do have other information how to get a hold of me. If you want, talk with me person to person. I do commission work. I'm sorry that I didn't really have much to show you. I did have much, but something happened along the way here, so I wasn't able to, bring out those pieces today.
No,
But
this is fantastic. You've shared so much, and I've learned so much from you during the course of this presentation. So thank you. We have some more questions that have come in. Another question just about Hopi in general, and somebody is asking what the term First Mesa refers to.
First Mesa refers to Polaaca, which is a town of Hopi potters only. The Hopi pottery comes from First Mesa, which is the village of Hanuki, Sichomovi, and Walpi. We have potters in all of those villages. And like I said, we share, each other's, the styles, the techniques, designs, and that's how we learn and that's how it's gonna grow, because if we just keep it to ourselves and be stingy with it, nobody's gonna learn anything. Nobody's not gonna learn anything because you don't want them to learn, and that's not how it should be. We should be all open, teach each other's, what needs to be done, or, share, materials with one another. Say if somebody needs something, I'll give it if I have it. You give out, you get more back. And that's just something that, I learned too. But this, like I said, this was a long journey. I didn't know I was going to be, this artist as I am today. This is something that, I'm humble with. This is something that, I'm grateful that I have this talent. Not very many, like I said, in the village don't have, this talent. But there are people that are wanting to learn. They're wanting to learn, from their generations. Sometimes they ask, who are your grandparents? And I don't know that many older people. I know the names. They've talked about them. I never got to meet a lot of, but I got to meet a lot of my older elders, that have passed on, that, made potters, made pottery, and learn their inputs too on it, and what it's all about. It's something that, we've had and that we should carry on, and just like I mentioned, share with each others, you know. Eventually we do that, it's gonna grow bigger. I'm sure it will. So
Yeah.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if there's any other questions or like the designs. The designs I'll talk about now is a lot of them are old traditional designs. I have some of my grandma's designs that I use, but with her designs and my designs, I kind of like put them together. So it'll have like my creations and a little of her designs in it. So I'll like create something, but I'll, use a little bit of her designs and then I'll use a little bit of my design in it, to create something. Some like this one here is the old prehistoric design. It was still intact. I saw it on a photo. And so I took that design and I, you know, create it. I didn't, do it exactly the same way, but I kind of, like I said, I kind of, put my mind and my heart and my designs into what it should be, what it should be like, you know. But like I said, the designs, are just from the families of generation. They carry on, the different types of designs or the colors of their pottery, like the white slip, um, the natural gray slip, the yellow with this, which turns red when it fires. So the yellow clay is um, different areas on the pottery, like the red that you see in the butterfly maiden's headdress. That there is this yellow here. So when this fires, this will turn red. So all the pottery that you see here with this, that you say like, okay, I'm gonna fill in the area here with red, just to bring the pottery out to make it look more beautiful. Then this is what we use. So there are different types of colors that we use, but I pertain just to use the red. There's white, which is a whitewash, which is a little bit difficult to work with. And there's also a little lighter pinkish red that we use also. So just different, people, like to experiment, with something. Like for me, I had to experiment with a lot of this, before I really put my mind and sat down to, see what I'm doing, or, okay, this is it. This is all I need. And then like, this is all I need, you know. This is pretty much it. The only thing I have is a little measuring spoon where I just, get my water through, but everything else is all from there.
Yeah, we have a few questions. I really enjoyed what you shared about the process of learning and teaching in terms of your design and from your family. And we have a question from Rob, who asks if you like to visit museums to see older Hopi pottery.
Yeah, I do. In fact, I do have some of my pieces in the museum. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Museum of Northern Arizona. They have a collection. They have pieces in the museum of mine, which is on display, which you can see. I hear about the Smithsonian in Washington, the Indian Smithsonian, Washington, D.C. I hear that they have a couple of pieces, and I wondered how they got them, but I believe they were donated by a buyer of mine that purchased them, and I'm not too sure if I think she might have, you know, was concerned about her health and she didn't know what to do with the pieces. So I think we have some pieces in the Smithsonian. I've heard about it and my name was mentioned, so I'm pretty sure they're there also. But like I said, this is worldwide. Worldwide, I'm all over, the United States, and I've, sent a lot of pottery out, like I commission work. I send a lot of pottery out, and I do a lot of commission work. Um, Everything pretty much here in my home is pretty much private. I really don't put it onto the internet. But you probably could Google my name if you want to see more. And that would be the best thing to do is, and it'll pop up. It'll show you all the pottery that I have that I've done. My awards, I've won a lot of numerous awards, major awards, best of show at the Hopi Market, which is the Museum of Arizona, best of class, the Herd Museum about 4 years ago, India Market, the Helen Maha Memorial Award, best of class, best of division, I mean, Judge's Choice. I think I pretty much have everything. I got a container full of awards, so sometimes I don't even put them up, but I guess I should. That would probably cover one whole wall if I did. So, but it's just something like I said, as you go on, you learn those, and eventually, people find you. They'll come and find you. They'll look for you. Like, I was in the Arizona Highway magazine, featured in the Arizona Highway magazine. Uh, I mean, that was like maybe 8 years ago in the Arizona Highway. Natives People magazine. Um, just different, things. Like, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Steve Trimble. I don't know if you're on there listening. His book. Um, there's so many things right now.
I do think you have won pretty much all the awards.
Yeah, I have them in a container, and I have
Mhm.
some over here in the counter cabinet here too that I haven't put up yet. So
Do you like participating in markets?
yeah, I do. It's kind of like, for me, the competition wise, this is good, because you get to, it's, I mean, you got to make it fun. You just can't go in there and say you're gonna win. You never know. You never know what's gonna come up. Somebody can walk in there with their best piece, and then they don't get anything. And they're upset about it. But this is what it's all about.
Mhm.
You go in there with your mind and a happy mind, happy soul. Go in there and enter what you got, your best piece you got. And if they don't win anything, oh well, you try again.
Mhm.
And you keep trying and you keep trying. I mean, just that's what I do. I just work on my best piece, and that's what goes in there. And this is what they like. This is what they like.
Mhm.
It could be this over this, to win an award, because they just think it's a unique piece. So
Absolutely.
that too competition, and I was a judge. They invited me to judge this past year for the Santa Fe market. That was my first time, so I know how the judging works now. I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing how, and I look at the potters that I competed against. And these same people that I competed against were at Santa Fe. Oh no, we're at the Herd Museum show. And these are the people that I competed against to win that best of class award. To me, that's awesome. But these awards that I win, I bring it back to all my Hopi people, not just myself. I think about the rest of the potters here. Thank you, provide, thank you, somebody from First Base. I want something for all of us, something that we should all share together and be honored and be happy about, because somebody from this reservation goes down there and brings back this award for our people here, our Hopi people. It shows something for our Hopi people here. It shows that we're learning these kind of things here. So, but there's
Um,
lots, I can, really sit down and there's lots, I can, really talk about, like, the business, that's still another part, the business, all of that stuff. And I'm sure, some of you guys have purchased stuff from me, have maybe had questions in the galleries, about my work, or have gone into the art galleries and seen it. But, you can Google my name, Google Garrett Maho. Actually traditional Hopi pottery, Garrett Maho, and it'll pop up. I kind of sometimes I'll Google it and look at some of my back designs, when I'm working on my pottery and, try to use it again, but most of the designs that I use are non-repeating. They don't repeat. Some of them do repeat, some of them don't. Sometimes you don't even remember them. And most of the time, I really don't take a lot of pictures, what I should, to keep a portfolio. I do have some of my very first pieces, but some of the other ones, usually the people that come and see me will take photos of it, and then they'll send me the photos. So that's how I know sometimes I keep them, but most of the time, I really don't take photos of them, which I should, like I said, which I should. Um, but other than that, that's me, and I don't know if anybody else has any questions or.
Yeah, we have about a little over 5 minutes left, but we have a comment from Beverly who says that one thing that you said earlier on during our conversation is a great statement that really affected me as a potter. You said regarding the design that if you start with the line, then then you can just see where it leads you. And she loves that concept. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like see a lot of people, well, that line, actually that first line that you draw is your lifeline. That's the life of your pottery. That first line that you put on your pottery is that's the lifeline. That's the first line that is really drawn upon the pottery. And that knows that this pottery has a character. It's gonna be decorated with a design, and the designs just come to you. Most of the designs pertain to our culture, our ceremonies, feather designs, corn designs, bird designs, water designs. There's just so many things that go into the design as part of our culture also. Sharing that culture, like prayers that are painted onto the pottery, prayers planted into the earth, the vegetation, the sun, all of that goes into the pottery. So, like the headdress, it's, the red on it symbolizes the sun, the black symbolizes the universe, and the dots that you see along here represent the vegetation. So many things, like the the steps on this headdress, the stages of life. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the 4 lives from birth, mid-child, manlyhood, and your older age.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Well, just to wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to talk to Mayak audience about?
No, I do have a phone number if anybody, I don't know, I could give it
Yeah.
now or okay. If you have any questions or anything, or if you want to commission a piece or talk to me privately, my number here is 928-737-2618. I also have an email address, which is Garrett Maho, which is GARRETT Maho MAHO, the number 4 at gmail.com. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Garrett, for such a fantastic presentation. This has just been a joy to learn more about you and your work. And thank you everybody for watching. So thank you again, Garrett, and thank you all for watching. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.